When most American anglers hear the word asp, they raise their eyebrows in surprise. Here, people are used to bass, trout, or pike, but very few know that a true relative of the European asp lives in the United States. And this fish has become one of the most fascinating species of my entire fishing career. I remember my very first trip to the river with the goal of catching an American asp. It was a foggy morning, and the water was literally boiling with bait fish. I had no idea that in just a few minutes, I would witness a surface attack that would forever change my idea of sport fishing. Fact number one that usually shocks beginners: there is no classic European asp, Aspius aspius, in North America. Instead, several very similar species live here, often confused with other predatory cyprinids. These are the fish I collectively call the American asp. The closest relatives are silver chub, river chub, and especially the shovel-nosed minnow from the Cyprinidae family. But there is one more hero, a fish called the skipjack herring. It is not a carp, but in its hunting style, it is a pure asp. The skipjack herring is a true American surface predator. It migrates through the Mississippi, Tennessee, and Ohio river systems and attacks fry right on the surface. When I first saw it tearing through a school of shad, I thought it was a striped bass. This fish accelerates to insane speed in seconds. It does not ambush like bass. It constantly cruises the current in search of prey. That is why asp fishing in America is always about motion and adrenaline. Now let's talk classification. This is where things get really interesting. Right? I roughly divide the American asp into three main types: surface hunters, mid-water chasers, and bottom chasers. The first type includes skipjack herring and Alabama shad. They attack in the upper layers of the water and often give themselves away with loud splashes. If you hear a sound like someone throwing a stone into the river, that's them. The second type is various species of river chub and hornyhead chub. They operate a bit deeper, often in the middle of the current. They are just as aggressive, but show themselves on the surface less often. The third type consists of shiner minnows and large shiners that hunt closer to the bottom. They don't put on a show, but they strike the lure with such force that the rod is almost ripped from my hands. Their habitats are a science in themselves. I always look for them in fast current, below dams, and in places where the water breaks. Wherever the main flow meets calmer water, they set up their ambushes. Dams are true magnets for the American asp. In summer, I can stand for hours below a spillway, watching skipjack leap out of the water. It looks like someone is playing with living silver knives. Water temperature is crucial. The best bite starts when the water warms to 60-70 degrees. That is when the schools become truly active. Spring is migration season. The fish move upstream and I can literally read the river by the surface ripples. Beginners often don't realize that these splashes are not carp or gar. Now about tackle, because without the right setup, you will simply lose fish. I use a light or medium fast action spinning rod. A length of 7 feet is perfect for long casts. The reel should be high speed, at least 6.2.1. This fish hits the lure and instantly bolts downstream. If you can't keep up, breakoffs are inevitable. Line is a story of its own. I use 1015 LB braid with a fluorocarbon leader. This lets me feel even the lightest touch. Now the most important part, lures. Small metal spoons that imitate shad work best. Silver is the king color for the American asp. I also love small crankbaits with an aggressive wobble. They run in the mid-water layer and provoke savage strikes. Often the hit comes within the first 2 seconds after splashdown. Topwater is pure magic. When skipjack move up, I switch to small poppers or pencil baits, and the real show begins. The retrieve technique is simple but takes practice. I cast slightly upstream and let the lure drift. Then I speed it up sharply, imitating a wounded bait fish. It is very important not to rush. The American asp often follows the lure for several yards before striking. Stop too early, and the fish will simply turn away. Bites vary. Sometimes it is a soft tap, and sometimes it feels like someone hit the rod with a hammer. I always smile in those moments. The fight is a real test for your gear. This fish uses the current as a weapon, charging downstream and forcing you to run the bank. Beginners often make the mistake of trying to muscle it in. With Aspie, you can't do that. Better to give it some freedom than lose everything in a single second. A word about safety. Fishing below dams can be dangerous. I always wear a life jacket and never wade deeper than my knees. A bit of biology. Skipjack is a true sprinter. Its body is perfectly built for speed. It feeds mainly on shad, but will also take small crayfish. That is why wide wobbling lures work so well. They imitate wounded prey. This fish is very social and almost always stays in schools. Catch one and be ready for a flurry of strikes. I love watching the surface. If I see baitfish jumping, I know asp are close. That's my main indicator. Autumn is another fantastic season. The water cools, but the fish become even more aggressive, packing on calories for winter. In fall, I switch to slightly larger lures. Big asp don't want to chase tiny snacks. They want real meals. Winter is tougher, but even then you can find active fish in deep holes. You just need to slow down. I often use a vertical presentation in winter, working the lure almost on the bottom. Patience is the key. A little history. In 19th century reports, American anglers already described a fast silver fish that scatters schools. They had no idea it would become a cult species. Today, skipjack is often considered just catfish bait, but for me, it is a true sport trophy. It delivers more emotion than many famous species. I often take friends who have only ever caught bass. After the first asp strike, they stare at me with wide eyes. That's the best advertisement this fish could ever get. Another interesting fact, this fish is almost impossible to breed in captivity. It needs running water and long migrations. That's why you won't find it in ponds. As for gear, I always carry polarized sunglasses. They let me see splashes and shadows under the water, doubling my chances. I also use a small landing net. Asp have delicate mouths and often come unbuttoned right at the bank. Photography is another joy. In the sun, these fish are stunning. Their silver scales shine like mirrors. I release most of the asp I catch. Preserving the population is important to me. This is the future of American spinning. Kids love this fishing. You don't have to wait long. These strikes often come right after the cast. If you want to find them, start with big rivers. The Mississippi, Tennessee, and Cumberland are true meccas. That's where I caught my biggest trophies. Don't be afraid to experiment. Sometimes I throw trout lures and get amazing results. Asp love the unexpected. I keep a fishing journal, noting water temperature, level, and weather. After a few years, you start seeing patterns. Morning and evening are the best times. The sun is softer and the fish move closer to the surface, the golden hour for asp. At midday, I look for deeper water where the fish hide from the heat, yet stay active. Wind can be your friend. It bunches baitfish together. And where there is bait, there is asp. Never underestimate bridge shadows. There is always fish there. That's my number one secret. One more tip, stay mobile. If there are no bites in 20 minutes, I move. This fish doesn't like waiting. Every asp trip feels like a hunt. I don't just cast, I read the water. To beginners, I always say, don't chase size. First, learn to catch any asp. Experience will come. Over time, you start feeling the moment of attack, an intuition that comes after dozens of trips. Then the rod becomes an extension of your hand. The American asp is the perfect species for skill development. It teaches you to work with current, lure, and yourself. It is the best school for a spinner angler. I often fish for it from a kayak, which lets me get closer to active zones, but you must be careful. The kayak gives me freedom. I can drift with the fish, a whole new level of connection with nature. When I sit in the middle of the river and see the water explode from a strike, I understand why I fish at all. These are pure emotions you can't buy in a store. I always recommend Americans try this fishery. It breaks all stereotypes. It's not bass, not trout, and not catfish. It's asp American style, fast, aggressive, and unbelievably beautiful. And if you've never caught one, then one of the best adventures of your life is still ahead of you.